Hi, welcome back. Next topic in our series about indie writing is basically about something that sets me, I think, apart from other authors and artists, and that is understanding the business and financial side of the business. It's one thing to write, it's one thing to publish, but it's another thing entirely all of the legalities that come into play and all of the finances that happen associated with sales, whether you're just selling online, which is a little bit easier. If you're selling in person, there's a lot more to do. Um, there are things to consider legally, such as business structure. If you're wanting to make this more than just a hobby to report to the IRS, you need to consider how you want to set up your actual business organization. Now, one of the simplest things you can do is just a sole proprietorship, which you would then report under your social security number. And that's fine, it works for most people. If you want to use an assumed name, like a pen name, typically you should consult maybe your county. I know in my county here, I have to actually apply for that assumed name and have it approved, and that's a process. And I think the county clerk sets that process up if you want to use an assumed name. Same thing with doing business as. So let's say either doing business as a pen name or doing business as, such and such publishing, if you want to have an official name that you want to use. I did work under a DBA for a number of years. And as my business started to grow, I switched over to a single member LLC. Basically, it's not a complex structure. Being a single member LLC, I still can report under my social security number if I want. However, you can still apply for an EIN number just to keep things separate for tax purposes. Um, if you want to set up an LLC, consult your state. Typically, there's a place where you can go and you need to have your articles of organization and typically pay a fee. I have to re-register every year to keep that LLC in good standing, just to make sure all the contact information is correct on it. Um, and basically, I think in the state of Illinois, it cost me like $150. I just went to the CyberDrive website, filled out all of the information, made my payment, and then they sent me all of my LLC information. And then I took that information and I went over to the IRS site and got an EIN number. I think it's important to know that make sure that you're going to the state site or the IRS site to do these things, because you'll have a lot of companies that will say, well, we can do this for you. They are going to charge an additional fee to do it for you. These are things that can be simply done by just you. You don't have to pay an attorney. You don't have to pay a company to do it for you. You can actually just do it yourself, and it makes it a lot cheaper and easier to do. But then you do have to remember, that you need to uh, refile every year to keep it in good standing. The other thing that you will need to do, especially not necessarily if you just do royalties, but if you're going to do in-person sales, you do need to set up a sales tax ID number with your state. I did that with Illinois. I think you set up in different, like whatever counties you're going to be working in, you will have to look at what the sales tax in those areas are and pay those on whatever schedule that your state designates. I know whenever I started out, they required me to pay that monthly. And then as they realized that, I wasn't putting down, I wasn't a big establishment. I did a couple of events a month. I wasn't making thousands upon thousands of dollars. So they kind of scaled that back to quarterly. And now I just submit my sales tax then annually. So these are all some of the things that you should probably consider in preparing for event sales. I know that a lot of this paperwork and tracking numbers and organizing businesses is not something that we often think of whenever we think of self-publishing, but it is something to consider because, like I said, you're your own marketer, you're your own editor, and you're wearing all of these hats, but at the same time, you also have to kind of wear this the CEO and the COO hat too. So you kind of have to, and even the CFO, like you have to play all those roles. And a lot of times I think that gets brushed to the side and a lot of people don't focus on it. And then what I have seen in the past is because people were not filing a Schedule C for their business on their tax return, or, well, it was mostly they weren't filing the Schedule C, then you were not eligible for any of the Paycheck Protection Program funds that came out during COVID. I actually got not a lot, but I got some of those funds because all of my events were canceled and I didn't make any money for that year, at least on the business side. So, since I had a history of filing a Schedule C, they could determine, what were my gross sales that I missed out on, because I was actually reporting those. So if you don't report them, then number one, you can't use them to qualify for any, government assistance, number one. And you can't use you can't use that income to apply for a loan. You can't use it for anything. It's basically cash under the table and you will get in trouble for it. You might think that you'll get away with it for a while, and you might, but eventually if you start bringing in enough money, questions will start to arise. And I don't know, I'd rather be safe than sorry. I'd rather be on the good side of the IRS rather than the bad side of the IRS. So if we all just follow the rules, then, it kind of relieves the burden for everybody, I guess. And I know nobody wants to pay Uncle Sam their fair share, but I guess it's not their fair share. I take it back. Nobody wants to pay Uncle Sam. I don't either. But it is the world that we live in, and you can get in a lot of trouble if you don't do it. So, all things to consider whenever you're considering this business endeavor.